All right. I'm going to have to get a stationary stool next time because I twirl a lot in this. I just want to go la, 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 la. And she was not going to put the Santa thing on, but she'll put that on.
Push,
La, la, la.
we need 500 subs and we can get some nice chairs.
We get some nice chairs. Help us get subscribers so we can get chairs that don't stink.
So today we are going to continue our discussion on expectations versus desires and how to manage those and find a healthy balance. Let's talk about it.
You are watching the Beyond Sunday podcast.
So last time on our previous episode, we talked about expectations versus desires.
Yep.
We talked about some of the differences between the two.
Yep.
How they're not necessarily always bad,
Okay.
but it has to be very carefully and well communicated in order to maintain healthy balance. But let's talk about some of the balance. So
Okay.
what are healthy and unhealthy expectations?
Okay. So we talked about this before you guys joined us. For me, when I use the word expectation, it's usually, so you're going to have to talk me off of this ledge here.
Okay.
I'm usually going expectation is an unhealthy thing. Just all the connotations around the word, like we talked about previously. I think it's really easy to step into the you owe me, you said competition.
Yeah.
Keeping score thing. So
Yeah.
I'm typically on the side, if I'm like talking with folks, I'm going to try not to use the word expectation anytime I can. That's where I'm starting from, at least.
Yeah. So, and I think it would have to be, again, very carefully communicated. But I do think in the right setting, sharing things that like for instance, when you start a new job,
Okay.
I think it's important to know what's expected of you.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So,
so-
in a workspace. Okay.
You
Yeah.
certainly would need to know these are the things that I have to get done. And if I don't, we're going to have some different conversations.
Right. Or we may
And
stop
so-
having conversations altogether.
Maybe
Yeah.
so. Or maybe we
Things can go
start
wrong.
keeping score all of a sudden. And it's like, well, 3 weeks in a row, you did nothing.
I think your boss should notice if you did nothing for
Probably.
3 weeks in a row. You're just sitting there
Yeah.
day snoring all day long instead of actually getting your job done. That's a shout out for people who weren't here last time, but that's okay.
We talked about this. Apparently, day snoring is not a thing.
We learned that. Sorry you weren't here for that conversation.
I could have
but you
swore
kind
it
of are
was,
now.
but it's not.
But it's not a thing. No,
So,
clearly not. So, okay, all right. I get it from a work perspective. I
Sure.
mean, we in a workplace, we have kind of a contractual sort of thing. You've hired me as long as I do my job, I get my paycheck, and I get to keep showing up day after day.
Right.
I can see that. And kind of like you talked about last time, if your boss, a teammate has something that, hey, you're going to get that done, right? Having those kinds of expectations, I agree with that. And I think maybe where I'm coming from is more from an interpersonal side, kind of
Yeah.
from friendships, marriages, things like that. Mm-hmm. All right. What do you think about expectations in those spaces?
I would probably lean more your direction
Okay.
with most of those begin to flirt with unhealthy tendencies or beginnings of unhealthy things.
Okay.
So, I think that it is fair in, let's say, in a marriage to communicate, hey, would you be able to get this done? And if I say,
Okay. Yeah.
yes, I'll get that done. Now, it is understood that I am expected to get that done all of a sudden.
Okay. So we agreed on this. We're both on the same page. Okay.
However, when push comes to shove, at some point I am going to fail in getting something done, and I'm going
Yeah.
to break your expectation that you had for me.
Right.
And so I think just the simple nature and pressure of an expectation starts to cause strain or creates
Right.
opportunity for strain.
Right. And I think, as you're saying that, I think in a relationship, I think there are some things that we should have, I don't know, at least a right to expect. So maybe it's something really foundational, like, I expect that we're going to remain faithful to one another.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's absolutely fair. These are the, the absolute non-negotiables for
Sure.
our relationship, and maybe in a friendship, because it's so different than a marriage, it's harder to have some of those non-negotiables that are
Right.
in there. But yeah, I think there could be some foundational expectations. But yeah, man, it's really challenging to figure out how to navigate this, because when you think about what you just said, in a friendship, hey, you're going to take care of this because, hey, we're going to go on a road trip. So you're going to do this. I'm going to take care of this part. We each have our part to do. You drop the ball on your side. Well,
We're sleeping in the van all of a sudden because
right.
I didn't get rooms.
You didn't get rooms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our first mistake is we're traveling in a van. That's probably not the best idea we've had ever. But
I spent years traveling in a 15 passenger, and
Whoa.
they're pretty all right if you get comfy.
I've
Find
only
the right spot.
Man, I'll let you have that experience. That's great. But if that's the thing, so we both understood that you were going to do your part, I was going to do mine. So yeah, the word expectation has to come in there. But yeah, so how do you navigate that without getting to where that keeps scoring, where now you owe me because you did
Yeah.
you didn't get the room reservations. Now we're rolling into town with nowhere to stay.
Yeah.
It
is a reality that on some level there has to be responsibilities on both sides when you're accomplishing
Right.
a task. And so yeah, if your job is you book the rooms,
Okay.
I'll book the flights. If either one of us misses that step, we got issues. However, I think there's a different position of the heart that you can take when you ask somebody to get something done.
Okay.
And then the moment that you hit the conflict time, let's say you have failed me. You didn't
Okay.
get what you said done that you said you would get done.
Right.
Now, what I do with it is very important.
Right.
We can either be creative and say, okay, we have an opportunity to make some memories here.
You're a great person.
What are
if
we
you
gonna
do that.
do?
That's awesome.
But a position of grace will help your
Yeah.
expectation not become a score
Okay.
or
Yeah, I
a
think
goal
that's
in
fair.
the competition.
Right.
But the reality is people will fail each other, and I
Yeah, we're
will
not perfect, sure.
not meet some expectation that's been had of
Right.
me.
Yeah.
And so I think you could probably get caught in the weeds figuring out when and what is okay. But the reality is expectations, they are a thing. And I don't necessarily think they're always bad because I have no reason not to trust that you'll do something if you said I'll do it.
Right.
And so I choose to trust that. But then if you fail me, I understand that people will fail people. And so then
Yeah.
I would just, the right thing to do, I should say.
Right.
I can't promise that I would respond this way,
Fair enough.
but would be to hold a position of grace and say,
right.
okay, let's work this out, instead of holding on, keeping score.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if there's, even in for our kind of our internal thoughts and language, if there's something else besides, hey, you failed me. Because that probably sets it off on the wrong foot anyway. Harder to go find grace down the you failed me path.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my point across when I say something like that.
Right. Yeah. So even if you drop back and I don't know, maybe you guys know, but trying to figure out, what does that feel like? Because if it comes out, hey, you failed me. Hey, you dropped the ball. Any of those things, they are truly heartfelt, probably. But they are not conveying anything that's going to lead down towards a path of grace.
Right.
That person's probably feeling defensive already. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's really possible, unless you're just a way better person than me, to not get in the defensive mode. When it comes time to communicate, we have to now create a solution.
Right.
That's the reality that we want to get to. However, I need to make sure I communicate that with a slight jab in there. And,
you don't want
sometimes-
them getting away scot-free.
Yeah.
Someone's got to pay
How
for
horrible would that be? But it's so subconscious for us most of the time.
Yes.
And you'll say something like, okay, since you didn't get this done, now let's figure this out.
Right. All you had to say was, okay, let's just figure out how we're going to find a room for tonight.
Let's get a room.
You and I both know it's because you failed to get
Yeah.
it. But by adding that little bit in, I just want you to remember and
Let's not
acknowledge
forget.
this is your fault.
Yeah.
As long as we can both understand this is your fault, we can move forward fine.
I want to get it out in the air that if we can't find a solution, it's on you.
It's on you. We're freezing in the van because of you. Good. All right. Fair enough. See, that's grace. No, not quite. But yeah. You're right. That jab is so easy, and that jab can come from the expectation, I think. So thinking back as we go to marriages, because this is where I see this come up a lot, stepping into that move from a desire. We talked a little bit about desires last time, and when they shift over, I think that's a huge deal. I think a lot of people encounter that in those intimate, those very personal relationships, it gets really real when we put expectations on our spouses. So talk to me about some of the impact. What's going to happen when those kinds of things happen then?
I think any time that you are living in a land of expectations for somebody,
okay, yeah,
it opens a door for resentment, bitterness,
okay.
Frustration, challenges, guilt, comparison, and the list goes on and on and on.
Right.
It opens up a wide, wide world of things that are better not to walk down. And I think the reality is relationships are super fragile. And when you place expectations on them, you're only creating pressure in that moment.
Right.
An expectation has pressure with it.
Right.
Like in a job, if I don't get my job done,
right,
probably consequences.
Sure.
And the same thought process and feeling goes in with relationships. And so I think that the risk is always with an expectation of a spouse or a significant other or, whatever it may be, even a parent
okay,
or friend. It's just creating pressure.
Okay.
And pressure to perform, pressure to accomplish or create value or
right,
prove yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that immediately just doesn't feel healthy.
Right. And, we had talked previously about the ability to communicate those things. So I think a lot of the expectations. So, one of the things that comes up with couples a lot, to get really real with y'all, is intimacy. Hey, are we, going to have a good time or not? I was expecting we were going to, spend some time together tonight, and that kind of thing. And so whether that happens or not, I think there can be for some folks that you end up hearing that there is an expectation in that moment, and someone can be let down, and then there's an onus there. But in a lot of cases, so it started with a desire, moves over to an expectation. I've talked with couples and some counseling and things like that about how that's crept in, and a lot of times it's so uncommunicated. Like we're not actually sharing our heartfelt needs or anything else. And it may be in other things beyond intimacy, just how we spend our time together, how we're going to manage our future, or, what we're going to do on vacation, any of those things, that instead of actually communicating and going, you know what, I'm just going to be open, just vulnerable. Hey, here's my heart on this. Man, this would mean so much to me. It feels too soft, like you could be let down. Instead, you just stare at the other person and go, you know what I'm thinking. And as if they're going to pick that up, and when they don't pick that up and follow along on your plan, you go, and you use the phrase consequences.
Right.
So in work, if I don't show up on time every day, there are consequences. But in truth, if I let down my spouse, I think too often in relationships we see the truth that there are consequences, and there shouldn't be.
Right. There shouldn't be.
Right.
But even like the example you used where you are making eye contact, not verbally communicating anything, you're like,
Not a thing.
read my mind.
Right.
Isn't that already an expectation at that point?
Yep. I expect you to understand what I want.
Exactly. And so there was no desire there.
Inception expectations.
Yeah.
Deeper and deeper. Yeah.
I'm still not proficient in mind reading. I'm trying. Because I feel like that would help some things
Clearly
out
not.
in many relationships that I have. That would be helpful. But I am not good at it.
No. Yeah, that whole, just a quick tip. If you think, hey, the guy I know, my boyfriend, my husband, he should get these things.
Nope.
We're just going to be honest. We don't. No, were really dense. If you go, I was throwing down some clues, some subtle hints. We don't do nuance. Just be upfront and just tell us stuff. That's super easy.
Very helpful. Very helpful for me.
Important key, just be really upfront, be direct, be honest. But no kidding though, all kidding aside, is that's how we should be in every single one of our relationships. Just be real honest. Hey, here's what's going on inside. Here's what's in my heart. And this would be awesome. And you go, oh, okay, that's cool. Or somebody says no. That's the worst that can happen is somebody says no and you go, oh, well, that's unfortunate. Because they were going to say no anyway, but you were just going to have an expectation. So you're going to be mad twice over instead of just let down on the front side, I guess.
Right. So how long can a desire sit as a desire before it begins festering and turning into an expectation?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I don't know.
Because at some point it shifts.
Right, because it's unmet. It's,
But even if I have a true desire, the responsibility is never on the other party if it's a desire.
Right.
So a desire is a longing of me for somebody or something to play out in a certain way.
Okay. All right, I'm with you.
But if it's just a desire from me, it's on me.
Okay.
I mean, a desire doesn't create
It doesn't have the onus.
a forced action.
Right, yeah.
And so where and how does a desire begin to sit and fester and become an expectation?
I don't know. I think it depends. Great answer. I think that depends based on,
No clue.
no clue. Fair. It just should end with, I don't know, and roll credits. Call it good. But I think it's going to depend on, how you're wired up. If you're a little more high strung, I think it probably translates quick. If you're a little more patient, I think it could also depend on whatever the issue is.
Sure.
However, urgent or deep that hurt or need is, it's generating the desire. But I think and we've said this a number of times now, I think the avoidance strategy, the way while I don't know how long it takes for it to fester, the fastest way for it not to fester is to start talking about it. So just start sharing and airing things out. One of the great things, my wife is amazing at this, by the way, is I'll start talking about something and she listens really well, and she'll just start going, okay, explain that to me. Tell me about that. She starts asking these questions, and I wasn't intending to communicate, oh, by the way, here are all the desires of my heart. Here's how things work inside. But she's just pulling all these things out. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, apparently that's how I work inside.
Good listening draws out desire.
Oh, yeah. Yes, exactly. It's like, here's the surface of what's going on in my brain, or here's the just the subject we're talking about. But through the good listening, the questioning, and everything else, we get down to kind of here's just how I operate at a core level. And so there's all kinds of desires and things that'll spur out of that. So I think as you're having conversations and you're going, here's what I'm thinking about. And you try and unpack that with somebody, it shares your heart. And if you're with somebody who cares about your heart, a friend, even a coworker, a spouse, any of those things, if you're with people who are sincere, people who care about you, people you should be in a relationship with, then they'll ask, they'll hear, and they'll understand the desires, those wants and things that you have. And even if they're not met at that point, then there's still more opportunities to communicate. And so I think that keeps it from moving to an expectation. So
I think about just a couple safeguards for protecting and allowing desires to remain desires.
Okay.
And I think there's a handful of tools that we can use that allow them to remain, or things that we can keep in check to allow desires to rest better.
Okay.
One, as a Christ follower, we have prayer as a powerful weapon of desire. And there's a selflessness that has to happen and has to grow always if we are going to move from expectation to desire.
Okay.
So often I can at least look back for myself and know that many of my desires and or expectation, no matter what it is, are for my gain in some way.
Okay. Yep.
And even ones that are okay. They may be righteous and pure and fine, but still they are still rooted in small bits at times, maybe large bits of selfishness. And so as we learn more and more and more, again, as a Christ follower, to be more like Christ, to recondition and retrain our minds, then I think we can sit in healthier places of desire and be able to remind our hearts. But I think selflessness draws out selflessness in other people, whether it is a spouse, a coworker, a friend, whatever relationship it is. As I begin to live in a selfless way, I believe that will speak and shift an atmosphere, situation, relationship,
Right.
whatever. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, anything that's, I think, healthy. And I think that's a very common fear in a relationship is that our desires may be unmet. It comes from a selfish place. So when we're being more selfless, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to try and meet my friend's desires, my spouse's desires, my boss's desires. Hey, I know this would really help my boss out if I got this done, whatever those things are. I think there's a tendency that we're so worried about our own needs being met and things, our desires going unfulfilled, that it's like, man, I'm just going to pour out, and who's going to take care of me? And I think rather than being in that fear, there's this moment of like faith, this trusting moment that says, no, I'm gonna really look out for other folks. I'm gonna meet their desires, help them out where they're in need, and really just figure out, hey, what is it that I could do for you? And in doing that, I think, like you said, it creates a different environment.
yeah.
And there's a higher likelihood that you're going to experience reciprocation, that somebody's going to care about your own needs and things because theirs are being met.
Right.
And they feel safer, they feel more secure. And so if you're on the better end of it and you feel like, no, I think I can reach out to other folks. Mm-hmm. It seems the wrong direction, but I think it's the shortest way around.
Right.
Meet some other folks' stuff, and then it comes back around to you. So
and honestly, this is so hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
But if we really have to reckon with reality and ask ourselves, again, my lens is a Christ follower.
yeah.
Who's my source? Am I looking for
Right.
my desires to be met, my fulfillments, my expectations to be met through you, my spouse,
I'm going to let you down.
every time?
Yep.
In some way, flesh will fail flesh,
Yeah.
which is why we have the gift of a perfect God
Right.
that has to be our main source. And so it's a real challenge because sometimes we feel such righteous conviction about whatever it is we desire or want or
Right.
even expect.
Right.
But when push comes to shove, we have to always, I think, be willing to take responsibility on ourselves that we're leaning or trusting into things that are not God being our source or whatever it may be.
Yeah. It's really true. Really hard to do, though. It's like, I'm going to trust that God's going to take care of it, and that He's going to fill those things, when a lot of times it's just so easy for us to lean into the things we see in the material world around us. And I want those to fill the holes and the needs and everything else. So, I think it's an important core truth for us to remember. Well, I hope some of this has been helpful. As we think about our relationships, I think expectations is just one of those key areas where we end up stepping off on the wrong foot and we cause tension and conflict in our relationship. So give it a thought, and we hope this has been helpful for you, and we'll catch you around next time.
This has been another episode of the Beyond Sunday podcast. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe.